I'm going to talk to you about cannabis, weed, ganja, my own particular favorite, the devil's lettuce. My intention today is to inspire you through storytelling and ideas about connections to get involved in the industry. Because we need people with kind hearts, strong minds, and creative ideas to get involved and make it interesting. Because a lot of what's out there isn't really doing what needs to be done. So I'm going to start with asking you a question. Can anyone tell me what these people have in common? Shout it out. Yeah. So first of all of them are in favor of legalization of medical cannabis. Who else can say they're in the same boat? Okay, so you're about on par with the statistics in Australia, where 87% of people are in favor of legalization of medical cannabis. And the other thing they all have in common is that they have all admitted to participating in the devil's lettuce for recreational purposes themselves. Who else can say they're in the same boat as that? All right, pretty good. So you're actually above average for Australia, which is one of the highest cannabis consumers in the world. 35% of people over the age of 14 admit to having tried cannabis in Australia. And that's one of the highest numbers in the world. It's one of the biggest per capita consumers of cannabis. And what's interesting about that is that I'm not getting my notes on the screen, but I'll come back to that in a second. That comes from the biggest global drug survey in the world and also the biggest national drug survey. And I'll have a source for that data at the end, because don't trust people who just throw statistics at you without footnoting them. So yeah, where I'm going to start with that is with my own personal story and how I got here. So it starts 12 years ago in Mexico, where I had moved there after finishing my master's degree in Dublin. The GFC had just happened, and I went on tour with my band over there. And there wasn't much for me to go back to in Dublin, so I decided to just stay there. And I naively thought it would be easy to move to Mexico, even though I didn't speak Spanish. I'd previously moved to Copenhagen and lived there for a few years, which was easy, because it's a Scandinavian social democracy, everyone speaks English, and life in general is just pretty easy. In Mexico, nobody speaks English, life is pretty hard, and everything is corrupt as fuck. So if you don't have money to buy your way into something, you can forget about it. So this was a bit of a disaster for the first few months. Couldn't find anywhere to live, couldn't find any work. I was working as a teacher and a music journalist at the time. So what I managed to do was hook up a trade with a school in Oaxaca, where they gave me intensive Spanish lessons in return for teaching English there. And so I got pretty fluent within about a month, and found myself later on working in Chiapas with an indigenous tribe there called the Tzotzil. And I was working on a potable water project, irrigation for the village. And it was really hard, backbreaking work, just digging trenches, putting in pipes. But they were all subsistence farmers. So they could only get everyone together in the village to work on this one day a week. And all the rest of the time they were working on their coffee, which was their main cash crop. And it was excellent coffee. And they had a great story behind them, and people would have been interested, but I couldn't find a market for it. And that was down to the corrupt nature of society. They didn't have the money to pay the coffee barons in San Cristobal to get into the market. So at that stage, you gotta remember that I was from a hardcore punk background, DIY mindset. Business was the worst word in the world. It was the worst four-letter word. It's just one step away from capitalism and nothing for me. So I started realizing that all the demonstrations, all the protests in the world could only get you so far. And what speaks to power and what speaks to change is business and economy. It's the only thing they listen to. So after I left Chiapas, I was haunted by the fact that these people couldn't get ahead in any way just because they weren't able to tell their story. So I moved to London and I got a job in a place called London Institute of Marketing and Technology. London Institute of English and Technology. And I'm not sure what's going on with these slides. They're just moving all over the place. I'm not getting notes either, by the way. But I got a job there because, as the saying goes, those who can't do, teach. So I learned about business by teaching it. So that gave me the skills to start figuring out what I didn't know, and I realized that what I was good at was marketing and storytelling. So moved to Melbourne in 2010, got a job with a company called Loving Earth, an organic chocolate company who imported most of their ingredients from Mexico and South America. And I started on the factory floor there, soon was supervising, and began moonlighting doing their comms and marketing, because nobody was doing that at the time. So it was just newsletters, social media, and so on. And when I started there was maybe 15 people in the company. It grew very quickly. Pretty soon I was managing a team of 6 people, and I left there 5 years later in 2015, and the company had grown to more than 70 people working there. But I learned everything I could. So I went through a series of jobs. I worked for ethical recruitment. I worked in marketing agencies, fair trade certification, sustainability consultancies, until I felt that I had all the skills that I needed. And then I started my own company, Purpose Communications, in 2017, with the lofty ambition to be Australia's most ethical marketing agency. Which, might be a contradiction in terms, but we'll see how that pans out. But this is what put me in touch with Dr. David Stapleton. So Dr. Dave is a biochemist in his late 50s, 25 years at the University of Melbourne, a recovering Christian, had discovered cannabis, and never smoked it, never mind inhaled it. He was just interested in it for its use as a material across society, for health, for building, and so on. So he reached out to me and said, look, I'm trying to put together this cannabis brand. So we started building a strategy. I started doing my research, and that's when I found out about Australia being the biggest consumer of cannabis in the world. I think 1 in 10 people admit to regularly smoking it. And cool, thank you. Notes. And I had personally become quite interested in it as I'd been touring a lot in the USA, especially on the West Coast, and I'd been watching with fascination as decriminalization and legalization happened, and was wondering how do I get involved in this? This is interesting, but everything going on in medical cannabis was really boring. It's just if you're not already rich, you can forget about it. It's just a bit of a bad facsimile of the pharmaceutical industry. The look, the feel, the processes, it's just not interesting. Also, the hemp industry, on the other hand, was kind of stuck in the 70s, a lot of hippie stuff, not really that interesting. So I had personally started using CBD in 2017, which I got from a naturopath in Byron Bay, and it was the only thing I'd ever found that helped me deal with anxiety and depression. It worked so well, it was incredible. And it wasn't like pharmaceuticals where it just switched off the bad thoughts and left me kind of feeling a bit nothing. It meant that I could still interact with the bad thoughts but not be controlled by them. And so the more I researched, the more fascinated I became. So we put together a strategy, we built a website, and the approach was total honesty, total transparency. And a lot of that was being able to lead with Dr. Dave, because it's one thing with an Irish marketing guy with tattoos on his hands in his 30s telling you should smoke cannabis. But with a biochemist in his 50s, people are more inclined to trust them when you're talking about an illegal substance with a lot of stigma around it. So people responded amazingly. We launched the brand in November 2017 when hemp foods became legal in Australia. We launched with some simple products, hemp seed oil for pets, hemp flour, hemp protein, and it went really well. And we made ourselves available to answer questions, and that was the big thing. We blogged a lot, we wrote a lot on the website, and we were on the phone, on the email, and just wore our hearts on our sleeves so people could trust us. We weren't just a faceless company. We were saying, we're behind this, and we're going to admit that we're in favor of cannabis, and we're not trying to pretend, oh no, there's good cannabis and there's bad cannabis. We were saying it's the whole plant. That's what we need, that's what society needs, and that's what we believed. The problem is, these two guys don't like it. So you're not able to use all the marketing shortcuts, AdWords or advertising and so on. They ban you. And so you just can't get a foot in the door with that if you have words like cannabis are related to it in anything to do with your URL or marketing. So what that then meant was that we had to come up with some new ideas. And so we were developing a lot of different products. And so one of the main ones that we were interested in was gin. So we developed a hemp gin. And we didn't think it would go particularly well, or not better than our other products anyway. It was expensive. It was $100 a bottle. But the whole reason was it was a Trojan horse. Gin was having this big moment in Australia. Some brilliant brands like Archie Rose, Four Pillars. And we were like, okay, people are talking about gin. Cannabis was having this huge moment worldwide. And so we got ready to launch it in time for Christmas 2018. And the idea was to bring the conversation about cannabis to the Christmas dinner table, get it, across different generations. So we launched pre-sales on 28th of October 2018, and it went viral. It went crazy. We sold out in 3 days, 300 bottles. And we couldn't believe it. It was like being in marketing and PR and so on. I'd written 100 press releases. They very rarely get much purchase. But this, I don't know if it was the timing, I don't know if it was the way the story was told, but everything came together, that kind of perfect storm moment. And it went crazy. So we sold out of the first run in 3 days. So we were like, oh shit, we got to get more gin into the tank. So we ran around Victoria getting the different collateral, the bottles, the ingredients, the botanicals, and starting to make the gin. And a lot of that was based on Dr. Dave's innovation of using terpenes in the distillation. It's a really interesting area to look into if you're interested in cannabis, is terpenes. There's a lot of potential in there. So we got another distillation in the tank, and it was kind of down to the wire for final postage date around Christmas. I think it was 17th of December, packaging them all up, getting them ready to send out. And understandably, everyone starts emailing us, going, where's my gin? I need it for a Christmas present for someone. And we're saying, it's okay, it'll be there in time. We didn't know would it really be there in time, but it was. But then something really interesting started to happen. And what started to happen was the emails we were getting, we could see the signatures on them. And it was CEOs, managing directors, executives, people from some of the biggest companies in Australia. I obviously can't say who they are, but it was government agencies, NFPs, corporates. And this was where we were able to put the data together with the anecdotal evidence and go, actually, everyone in Australia does love cannabis. From the top of society right down to the bottom, every person was interested in buying this. And it was expensive. It wasn't a cheap product. So we kept selling it. We then had the idea, which I told you at the start, the different statistics. We had the anecdotal evidence. And then we started putting that together with the data coming in on the website, the user data. And that was really, really interesting, because what we saw was that unexpected segments, like people over 50, were converting at 15%, which means 15 out of every 100 people were buying it when they came to the website. So we started developing more products. We did the Navy strength gin is the one in the middle there. And we did a native botanical gin with my friends in WA from the Nyul Nyul tribe. And they went equally crazy. So it was at this stage that we started to realize this was bigger and bigger and bigger, and started creating more products in different niches for people. And then at that stage, I just started to realize that there was so much more here than the cannabis company could really provide for. And that, you know, we were in the churn of a business, just administrating it, doing all the everyday stuff, operations, keeping things in stock, just all the boring parts of doing a business. And so we didn't want to be doing that. I want to write, I want to tell stories, I want to share information with people. So myself and Dave both divested our shares and decided to move on. And so for me, these different insights I'd gotten about who cannabis consumers in Australia made me start thinking differently and made me start seeing that it was a personal mission to bring this story that cannabis is safe and cannabis is okay and it's for everyone. And so that's when I started Green Planet. So the idea with that is it's about information and advocacy, because cannabis is everything. You can make anything from it. And we're at a point now in Australia where we need change, like massive systemic change, and in the world as well. It's nice to do things like, you know, get rid of disposable plastic straws and so on, but it's not enough. These are PR exercises. They don't change much of the fabric of reality, and that's what we need to do by using new materials, and hemp is pretty much a perfect one for it. At the same time, we're at a point where anxiety and depression is through the roof. More people than ever are being diagnosed with these things, and what they're being given a lot of the time are quite harsh pharmaceutical solutions to them, where we'll only see this grow over the next 10 years. We're in a world that makes people anxious, and you don't want to over-medicate against that. We have anxiety for a reason. We should be anxious. There's shitty things happening, but you don't want to have to live with that every day, and that's a great place where cannabis can help you with. So then what's my angle on all of this? My angle is that I just want to help people. It goes back to the ideals I had as a 16-year-old punk rocker. It's just getting rid of cynicism and just going, yeah, we can change the world. I do want to save the world. And it was a great talk earlier by Stephanie from Voice. I'm not sure if anyone saw it. My generation, and most people in this room, our generation, Generation X, Generation Y, cynicism is deeply embedded in the way we view the world. We've grown up kind of learning that the world is lying to us, the government is lying to us, corporations are lying to us. And we've kind of gone, yeah, well, everything is fucking bullshit, so that's just the way it is. That's not a nice place to live in your head. And so I love this data that Stephanie presented, that Generation Z is different. They're thinking differently, and they're thinking with hope. And I think that cannabis represents a lot of things that can happen there. So this is an invitation for anyone who wants to get some insights here, has some ideas, wants to bounce them off me. I'm available. I'll be around for the next 3 days. We can chat, we can swap details. Because there's so much you can do with this plant, and there are so many ways to do it. But a lot of it is just about your own personal story and how you approach it and what you want to get out of it. If you want to get rich, you can do that. If you want to make money off it, you can do that. That's not the point for me. If you want to help people, you can do that too. If you want to help yourself or you're just interested in it, that's also another way that you can approach it. So to recap on what we've been looking at, the takeaways from this and from the stories I'm trying to tell is the offering. Who are you? What is your mission and purpose? What are your skills? Can the above intersect with cannabis, hemp, and associated industries? And this might not be obvious at first. This means kind of looking at yourself, looking at what you've done, looking at what your skills are, and going, what is the not obvious thing? What is not the hemp clothing brand? What is not the medical cannabis brand? What else can we use this material for that I know about? And so the second part of that is the connection, is what don't you have? And so what other skills, abilities, competencies do you need from other people, and how will you find them? And so for me, that was Dr. Dave. And it was the original kind of odd couple. We're just a million miles from each other. Conservative scientist in his late 50s and an Irish punk with the gift of the gab. But we were able to create a partnership that we both had the things the other one didn't. He had the legitimacy, he had the research abilities, he had the networks and the expertise, and he had the kind of face and name that you could put on a brand like this that makes people go, yeah, actually, I trust that. If he's going to put his career behind this, then yeah, maybe it's going to work. And you know, I could do the same, but I'm just starting out on my career and I've got a lot of different options. And that's where kind of courage comes in and the scary part comes in of admitting that you use cannabis and that you're in favor of it. And you know, as the statistics show, out of every 3 of you sitting here together, 1 person out of those 3 smokes it, but I think probably most of you do actually. But when you're walking down the street, 1 in 3 people are into it. Like that's pretty mad. We don't talk about it. You can't talk about it in work, in school, because you might get fired. It's like, it's still massive stigma there. So that's where the story comes into it. It's who do you need permission from? What do they need in order to trust you? And what story do you need to tell to confidently put your name behind this? And you don't necessarily need to put your own personal name behind it. You can be in the background. You can be bringing your skills to it. But in terms of who do you need permission from, well, what are you trying to sell? If you're selling something which is therapeutic or health-giving for older generations, well, you're going to have to tell the story in a way that appeals to them and that doesn't threaten them or make them feel exposed. And often what that requires is, we live in this post-truth society now where people rightfully don't trust marketing. They trust peer recommendations and they trust conversations with real people. And that's what people need to start doing, is having those conversations, which can be tough. You know, at the dinner table, at family events, and going, have you thought about using these things? And people will go, no way, and it'll be weird. But after that, you can actually help people a lot. So, yeah, we are going to finish up now and take some questions. First, I would just like to thank George and all the organisers. I'd like to thank everyone who's come here today to listen. And I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in Melbourne. The tribes here, the Wurundjeri, the Boonwurrung. And this is the first time I've done that. I've been in Australia 10 years, but I'm doing my citizenship exam on Friday. And it's a bit mad as an Irish person to go from someone who tells a personal story of, you know, being oppressed by colonialism to going from someone with a passport that benefits a lot from colonialism. So I think that's something that we can all help, is by trying to look to the traditional owners and custodians of this land and learn lessons about land management and how we approach that in the future. So, thank you.